All right, what's up, everybody out there at YTH Live? My name is Chris Walker.
My name is Joy Barnes.
And I am Cody Lopez.
And you are tuned into Technically Black, an unapologetic conversation with young Black leaders about how technology has increased youth activism in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or opinions, make sure you get it us below. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. So I'm here to just say, I want to start this conversation by telling everybody that racism has always been a public health issue. Because of things such as health disparity and income inequity, Black people and people of color have traditionally always got the shorter end of the stick when it comes to healthcare and when it comes to issues such as police brutality. And only in today's society, through advances of technology like using apps such as Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, have these things that we've been experiencing for 200 plus years have been highlighted and made public. And today's radical era, new age youth, we're really taking a stand against some of the injustices that we face. And that's going to be the topic of today's conversation. So Joy, could you please take a moment to describe the historical perspective of the Black Lives Matter, Black Liberation Movement, and how youth have participated in the past and how this participation has now been amplified?
Sure. So the Black Lives Matter movement really came about after the death of Trayvon Martin in 2012. And so it is both an organization and also an actual movement or social media movement, and also a movement in an umbrella in which Black people and other people who support and allies operate under. And that's not necessarily a new thing, right? We know that youth have been at the forefront of movements since movements have began in this country, from Jim Crow to the Civil Rights Movement, and even now with Black Lives Matter and the Black Liberation Movement, we see youth at the forefront. Freedom riders, some of them were as young as 18, and we're seeing youth as young as 13 and 14, protesting, creating TikToks, educating their friends, and really getting out there. Taking it back to my alma mater, the illustrious Morgan State University. A lot of people don't know, but one of the first sit-ins in the nation happened with Morgan students occupying a restaurant in Baltimore City, and that spread across the South. But that was a youth-run, youth-led demonstration that permeated throughout the country, right? So we cannot underestimate the power of youth, especially youth that have a mission, youth that are coordinated, and youth that are serious, because we've seen it with Freddie Gray and the uprising that happened in Baltimore City. We see it in Flint with youth organizers trying to figure out ways to get water to the city. We're seeing all of these movements being led by youth, for Black lives, and for liberation, for freedom for Black people. And we recognize that it is the youth that has been moving these movements forward. So yeah.
Awesome, thanks for that. Cody, could you please share how young people are at the center of this current Black Lives Matter, Black Liberation movement?
Yes, most definitely. So as a fellow Morganite, I just have to say and acknowledge that the HBCU experience is a huge contributing factor to the Black Liberation Movement. It is a place where young Black leaders can come together and be surrounded by other Black people and just be engulfed in a sense of love and Black pride. And it's a beautiful place for young Black people to go to just feel that unconditional love as a Black person. And also, like Joy was saying, the civil rights movement of the 60s, many of the youth and young people who are leading initiatives now, our parents and grandparents grew up in those eras. So we're learning from them and taking those experiences and connecting them to the 2020 and bringing them into the digital age. One of the things that comes to mind with what's going on right now is the word Sankofa, which means go back and get it. So I'm seeing a lot of young people take a look at the civil rights leaders of the past, like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and study what they've done already and improve on those ideals and learn how to mobilize from community leaders from folks from ACT UP all the way today to Freddie Gray and to the protest of George Floyd.
Mm. Thanks, Cody. Could you talk a little bit about the combination between innovation and intersectionality and how they relate to each other within this current Black Lives Matter, Black liberation movement that we see today?
Yes, so young people are at the forefront of the All Black Lives Matter movement. So Black Lives Matter started off as one thing, and today the youth, the young folks are calling for trans and queer identified folks to be safe in those spaces. So that All Black Lives Matter hashtag is a push from the younger community to include everybody. And I think it's great to see that. I think it's great that no matter how Black people show up for Black liberation, that we can all be respected and feel safe and loved, and work for a common goal to improve tomorrow.
Okay, thanks. So I want to ask y'all this second question. So how has technology amplified and turned the Black Lives Matter, Black liberation movement into a global thing? Can you share any personal experiences, anything that you've seen on your day-to-day work, or just anything that you just seen while scrolling down social media that represent how what's going on in the US is being seen and heard and felt across the world?
Well, in my own personal experience, watching videos of artists in places like Greenland and Iceland, graffitiing trains in Germany saying Black Lives Matter, that is a big deal because I personally do not have a network that extends that far, and to know that there are people who have seen the injustice that have happened here in America via any of the platforms, right? Like there's TikTok and there's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and who knows what they're going to come out with next. But just to know that our stories expand that far, and not even necessarily just, our Black plight, but also, Black joy, like in those areas too. Like I saw a video the other day of this Black woman in Switzerland or Austria rollerblading, right? And it went viral because she was so talented and so good at it, and she was so free with it. But that has also inspired a whole generation of like new Black skaters, right? So like we are the way that technology has kind of brought us all together. Our stories expand so much further than our own, like so much further than who we know, so much further than our country. And you really just kind of don't know if your story is going to be what engages and changes the heart of someone else somewhere else who's never even probably met a Black person before. And so I think that that's very powerful to know that, and not necessarily that we need the validation from people outside of our community, but to know that we do have that support, is valuable, especially to keeping up the morale and keeping on fighting for our rights. So, yeah.
Awesome, thanks. Cody, what are your thoughts on the issue?
I think social media is raising the awareness for many topics on a larger scale. You saw it, we've seen it over the years with the recording of police brutality against Black and brown bodies. And we've seen it now with the mobilization of the Defund the Police movement to actually get states to invest in people's well-being and address some of the social determinants of health. I think that social media has been great for kind of spreading that message and getting people educated on what defund the police really means and how it can be used to really change Black neighborhoods. And also, I'm a huge believer in economic empowerment for Black people. So social media is a great place for Black entrepreneurs to promote their businesses, to connect with other leaders in the community, and really gather resources so that way they can be more powerful together and connected, even across state lines. I think one of the great things about social media is people don't have to be in the same place to advocate for the same issue. So it is allowing a lot more folks to show up than folks potentially could just in real life. There are so many social media campaigns that are raising awareness. There are so many protests. Black Twitter is amazing when it comes to holding folks accountable. So social media is definitely one of the platforms that keeps people up to date with what's going on and holds the folks who are doing the wrong things accountable.
Okay. So what do y'all think does the future look like for youth activism for the Black Lives Matter movement, Black liberation movement look like, and what role would tech play in it? So what do you feel the future will look like as we go further with technology and as we push the limits and as we break some of this inequity that we see and feel today?
I think the ability to mobilize more strategically will be easier through technology. And as we begin to advance, like we now have the ability to organize protests overnight, right? And that's crazy. Like someone has experienced police brutality on a Tuesday, that Wednesday it's 100 people outside. Like that is the power of technology, and the power of social media, and the power of, again, just people organizing other humans who care. So I think the future will look a lot more like that. Will be like, as Cody said earlier, the ability to galvanize resources and making sure that we are collaborating. That will be easier in the future. I see the movement definitely being more unified and organized because we'll have the tools to do so. And I think that that's very important because we also will have a better understanding of what the roles are at that space too. I don't think we do a lot of, as we study the elders before us, we really kind of, we learn what the different roles and movement were for that particular generation, but there are the roles and movements have vastly expanded in the sense we're in the technological age, right? We need people who are protesting. We need people who watch people kids while they go protest. We need people who are gonna do all the tweeting. They might not ever show up, but they gonna tweet, and that's okay. Tweet. You do that. You tweet. And that's okay if that is your role, right? You know, I mean, there are people who literally all day will just flood police chat rooms as they're asking, like, hey, who are the suspects that burned down the CVS? You've got people who are literally just on there all day flooding it with memes and of Korean pop stars. That is crazy, but that's a real thing that has happened. And I think that as we mobilize with technology, that we're going to learn where people really should be based off of their natural talent. And we're not going to continue to force people to be where they shouldn't or where they're not comfortable just because of necessity. We'll find somewhere for them that fits and that works and that's sustainable because we have the technology to do so. So, yeah.
Thanks. That's good. Cody, what do you think the future has in store for the role of tech within this movement?
Okay, so previously I was talking about the connectivity of people around social justice issues. And I think tech is going to turn the Black Lives Matter movement into something like a digital family reunion, where you can show up to spaces. You might not necessarily know everybody who's there, but you feel safe because you're all family. And you're fighting for a common goal, the liberation of Black people. So I think that's how one way that tech is showing up. And also it's just allowing people to innovate at a rapid scale. Like Joy was saying, someone can be in a situation one night, the next day there's a mobilization happening. The next week there's a whole social media campaign. You know, the things just keep progressing and elevating. And I think as we continue to improve how we use social media to activate folks who may not be as in tune with the protesting kind of way of life or understand the importance of protesting, I think social media will bring more people into that fold and allow everyone to play their part and do their job and play a role in the Black liberation movement, like Joy was saying.
Awesome, thanks. Today's youth are much different from generations past. They have the access, knowledge, and courage to speak out on injustice. Through social media, reporting and information delivery have become a way of life. And many young folk are part of this group of emerging community journalists, and I'm living for it. I have seen my fellow millennials and Gen Zers share information about how to protest and uprise safely, and even share strategies on how to deal with the effects of pepper spray and tear gas. Technology has inspired today's youth to get active, and through this new age activism, our voices will finally be heard. There is power in language, and today's tech has added kerosene to that fire that today's youth have. I would like to thank my beautiful co-hosts, Cody Lopez and Joy Angelica, for engaging in this conversation. Can y'all please tell the people how they can get in contact with you?
Okay, so you can follow me on any social media platform at Joy Angelica. Also, for any individuals who are new to organizing, protesting, in the DMV area, kind of want to learn how to get involved and what organizations to join, you can follow at NFN News on Instagram. The NFN Network will help you figure out where you need to be. So thank you.
And Cody, how can the people get in contact with you?
Yes. So if people would like to get in contact with me, you can follow me at Mr. Cody Lopez on all social media sites. And if you want to learn more about Baller Life, which is Black Advocates Leading Revolutions, you can go to www.ballr.life, www.ballerlife, and you can send us a message straight from the website.
And once again, thank you to my panelists. And I want to thank you out there, my audience. And remember, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, or opinions, or you just want to say, hey, make sure you comment below. And one last thing before we leave, in order for all lives to matter, Black lives have to matter as well. Don't forget, be safe, be blessed.